Vanisher Horizon Scraper by Quedeca is his most recent album and a very it's like a journey. I don't know what I was saying. um I had a video on Vanisher already, but I decided to take it down as I really wanted to talk like more in depth, as I felt like I had so much I wanted to talk about. And if you want to thank anybody, you can thank Gabs. I will tag that channel in the description. They kept asking me if I'll make a video about this. And originally, I ran this like account called X8 Music Updates on like Instagram and stuff. And originally, it was just gonna be like a post on there, but I ultimately decided let's do a video. Let's do a video. Might be more fun, you know? Why not? Let's go for it. This is just going to be me giving my personal interpretation of each song on the album, and that's about it. I'm gonna give context before we get straight into it, and then we'll go from there. So I don't know how long it will be. I probably won't even do timestamps, but we're gonna talk about the rollout, musical influences. Then we're gonna get to the actual album. The rollout for Vanisher Horizon Scraper started on February 16th, 2024. As I am saying it, I think it's been 2 years and 1 month, and I'm forgetting the date. I'll put it in the description if I remember. It started when Quedeca released his project Scrapyard, and one of the songs, Way Too Many Friends, at the end, he was teasing an album, Vanisher Horizon Scraper, with these Sims. Blue and white, what could this be? I think originally people thought this was like a space album or something, from what I can tell. But as time went on, we learned it was more about ocean, maybe sailing. I saw some people saying like pirate, which I kind of wish it was, because Quebec would be awesome as a pirate. But you know, it's whatever. But anyways, no, I still love the album. So, and the rollout would last with a lot of snippets being teased in 2024. A lot of them ended up just either probably being repurposed. There's a couple that immediately don't jump out as they were on the album, but in my head I like to imagine they were like redone in like at a time like this, dancing without moving. You guys will know what I'm talking about, and you can just watch like a video or something. Anyways, as we reach the end of 2024, the album will not drop, and we would in the silent for the most part. And then 2025, snippets again, and then a post, and I had the photo of him at the lighthouse. So that just got really bright. It was him at the lighthouse in Greece, and then he announced X8 Music, and then boom, following that we got Godstained, and then Monday, and then we got Blush, Foregone, and then we got the full thing. This is it so summarized because I cannot remember everything for the life of me. I'm so sorry. I wish I could do a better job. Maybe at some point I'll do like Vanisher rollout video or something. Anyways, that's the rollout. The movie would release earlier, like an hour earlier before the whole album would drop. And by the time the album will be out on all platforms, you would be on Casper, the final song, already on the movie. So sorry if I heard something. And that's the rollout. What about post rollout? Well, Kodak has been on tour, you know? Vinyl, all that stuff. I don't need to get it. Anyways, that's the rollout stuff done. What about the musical influences on the album? Quedeca has stated a lot of the time that there was a lot of Brazilian music influence. And he hasn't given all the artists, but there's of course ones, Tom Zay, who is a very fantastic artist, who's a very unique artist. But these were artists he did name. Maybe I'm forgetting some, but he mentioned MIA, Luis Bonfa, and Cannibal Ox as big influences for the album. I remember him saying that Danny Brown showed him Cannibal Ox and The Cold Vein, and Quedeca really loved it. And then what else? And then MIA many times Kodaka has said that he was really into MIA because of like how she has been able to, you know, have like world music, but it's really weird and experimental. And I think he said that Luis Bonfa was like his favorite artist, or at least in his top five. All right, if you see me getting closer, it's because I'm reading my script. I'm so sorry. All right, on to personal interpretation time. We are starting. No questions asked. This song is like a mesmerizing piece using the sample from Shiko Bawa. I can't fucking pronounce it. I can't pronounce the last name, but I'm gonna say Shiko. I cannot pronounce the last name. And he took this the sample from the beginning of his album Constance Shao, and he took this like the first like few seconds, and then Kodaka just built on it. He built this world with this palette where he would just re-loop it over and over again, but he was adding like piano, sims, he was pitching it down, he was doing all this stuff, and you just have these beautiful refrains that whatever. And then it's mainly more like a piece, more like a meditation. It felt like, sound wise and visually, this felt like the start of like a journey. And then at the end you hear these lyrics asking no questions asked, like I will be there when no one is, no questions asked. I remember when the album first dropped and this was like everyone's like least favorite song, and it always confused me. This was always in my top 5 since my first listen. Genuinely, like that's not a joke, that's genuinely the truth. And I feel like I've had enough time to digest the album, and I feel like this interpretation of the album I'm very happy with. Anyways, what do I think this song is trying to represent? I think the song is the sailor. I'm going to refer to Kodaka as Kodaka or the sailor, so just bear with me. But I believe that the song is him so like disassociated and kind of like far gone mentally that he is so in belief that the horizon is like calling out to him, almost luring him, saying, I will be there when no one is. Like everything else, that's not going to be there, but me, the horizon, I will be there. You can get to me, and I will be there for you when no one is. And of course, in the sailor's delusional state, he kind of believes it. And on the second song, Waging War, this is where I feel like that's more explored. So, let's move to Waging War, shall we? Waging War. This one is proper. Like, this is less of like an ambient song as there is more lyrics. A lot of this is Kodaka talking about his internal battles between his heart and his head. Does he surrender to his heart? Like, his head is telling him, you know the horizon isn't calling out to you. Don't do this voyage. Don't sail into Oblivion. Don't do this. Don't sail into nothing. But his heart is telling him that he needs to do this. He needs to have some purpose, because if he stays on the land, he's just going to feel like he has absolutely sort of no purpose. So, how does he do this? He goes back and forth, and in the chorus you have Oleka, I don't know, but she is so talented and did so much incredible work. Honestly, before we fully continue, I want to say shout out the whole band. They did an amazing job on a lot of the production. Friends, and even the people not in the band, Johan Lennox, Johnny May, they did all fantastic jobs. Just quick praise. But you have Oleka singing from what is Kodaka's conscious, saying to breathe at your own advice, common solutions, but they won't suffice. Basically saying that his head, who I believe the first half is about, it's not really helping him. He kind of still feels this kind of longing for a connection or a purpose of sorts. And in the second half, where he surrenders to his heart, he gets to a lot of these sort of metaphors of killing people and death. And I always interpreted. I've seen some weird interpretations saying like he killed his other versions because they think it's a loop. I'm gonna get into that later in this. So, but spoiler alert: I don't think this is a loop. Even though no questions asked in Casper starts and ends with the same thing. I'll explain it later on. Anyways, waging war in the end, Quedeca ultimately listens to his heart, and then he sets sail, and then he's off. And another reason why I believe he sets sail. I think Quedeca said this himself in Genius, and some of the Genius annotations is that the main character feels like online. There's just no purpose. So if I'm saying that a lot, it's kind of because he said it. So yeah. Anyways, track 3, Ruin My Life. This song is a lot. It's a more acoustic driven song, and honestly, I think we need more acoustic Quedeca. Guide Dog, Picking Up Hands, all beautiful songs. Ruin My Life sees Quedeca first, getting used to what it's like out on the ocean, mapping out where he's gonna go, all that sort of stuff. However, it's almost a continuation of waging war, as even though he's following his heart, he still feels a sort of lack of purpose, but it's not as heavy. It's more brought up in the next song afterwards. However, in Ruin My Life, it's mainly Quedeca talking about feeling so young. He's been saying that people say he is so young. However, he feels so old, and this is sort of a very common thing that will be back and forth. A really good video that talks about this is the Professor Sky video called Lost on the Waves of Youth. That one was a really good video that actually really influenced this. So shout out Professor Sky. Anyways, Ruin My Life is Quedeca tackling with the mistakes that he had to deal with on land. However, this time, because he's setting sail, I always felt it more like he can actually deal with this now. He fully has a purpose. He has I feel like I'm not really good at this. I'm so sorry. But bottom line is that now that he's out at sea, he has some form of purpose. If he makes a mistake, he's going to feel a lot, at least like it was his mistake. At least he made something, and then you move on from it. That's how the first half is showing. However, after some instrumental breaks, we hear the voice of Harry Wilkinson of Maruja, and he does a spoken word passage. However, there's a couple lines on that part that really stood out to me as super interesting, and the main one that really stood out to me was I'm the starman of my sinking dream. I think subconsciously Quedeca knows how this journey is going to end, but he still wants to pursue this sort of journey. Something else that was brought up, I didn't bring it up in Waging War, but when the sailor gets high, he sees the ocean part in like Moses and stuff. If I'm getting that correct, I want to make sure I'm getting that correct. But yeah, I'm the starman on my sinking dream. I think at this point, Quedeca does know how this is going to end, but he still ultimately chooses his heart, and he wants to continue on this journey, no matter what happens to him. And another lyric that really interested me a lot was the lyric. Hold on, I gotta read my script here. Was where the background will set me free. The horizon is a very unique sort of thing that Quedeca decided to use. What does Quedeca mean by the horizon? There's many different metaphors I think anyone can use it for. One of the most popular ones, which I do agree with a lot, is that the horizon is meant to represent a sort of place of eternal peace. Sort of like you're always happy, you're always going to feel good, right? But of course, you can never reach the horizon. This is an impossible task, you know? And so I thought it was a very interesting idea that one of the lyrics in this was when the background will set me free, because the horizon is, of course, in the background, you know, you can always see the horizon, but you can never reach it. And there's a lot of lyrics that talk about that on this album. And I think the sailor wants to live a life that is meaningful, but he feels like he is pressured by the world around him. And that is why he needs to be sailing alone, because it is just him and no one else. He needs that sort of isolation and a loneliness, but it's not like in a depressing way. It's like the way you choose to be alone, and you are completely fine. That's how I personally interpreted Ruin My Life. Anyways, if you see jump cuts in this video, that means I'm like flipping my script. So, apologies if this seems so all over the place, and I will be right back. And we are back. Alright, track 4. It's the big one, Godstained. I feel like Godstained is a lot more important than people do realize. Like, not only in just like the movie, but I feel like in the whole album too. Because like the song right after Godstained is At a Time Like This, and that's like one of the most like existential songs on the whole album that do reference Godstained. Anyways, let's talk about Godstained. Godstained is easily the most accessible on the album, and that's okay. I think it's still a fantastic song. It's very catchy, and I still remember the rollout for this so much. I made a whole video on it. You can watch it. I don't know. I can't put it up there or wherever it will be. But let's just talk about Godstained pretty briefly, because I've already kind of talked about it before. I think Godstained is Quedeca losing again the purpose. I don't think it's. I think it's just worse though if he's losing purpose. I think if he lost his purpose, he would have just sunk in the ocean. I can't say the proper word, but yeah. But the reason I think he loses his purpose is because he finds this bottle. It washes up to him, no message. There's just no message. But the sailor is so adamant that there is a message. Is so adamant that the person who had this bottle last left a message specifically for him. The sailor, however, in the end, he ends up keeping the bottle with him. But I feel like that the bottle sort of haunts him for the rest of the album. I always have thought that I felt like that the bottle in Godstained kind of haunts him throughout the album. We are now on At a Time Like This. This one is a big one. In this song, this is Quedeca talking. This is one of the most explicit songs talking about maybe why Quedeca has been feeling this way. Because building up to this point, we don't fully have the realization as to maybe why he may have gone on this journey. In this song, I feel like it's kind of explained with a lot of the metaphors of getting older. I think that the sailor is deeply terrified of getting older, because right now the sailor, or Quedeca, is in his mid-20s. He's 25, 26 in October. That feels really parasocial. But yeah. And this is the song where I feel like the sailor is tackling his themes of aging. But also, another thing I felt like that made him feel older is that in Godstained, there's a lyric where he says, I'll call you December something 1998. I like to assume that this bottle is from 1998, 2 years before Quedeca was born. And because of this, in the song At a Time Like This, Quedeca is kind of haunted by how much older the bottle is, even if it's not that much older. Because there's a lot of lyrics like God stained my body, crashed my getaway, also literally saying that like the message is in the bottle. I forgot the exact lyrics, but it's in that like bit where it sounds like a horror movie, where he's literally talking about mixed in the glass of the spirits from the bottle. I want to leave a message for the person of tomorrow. I got it. That was it. I felt like that this was Quedeca really like feeling the effects, and he's considering jumping into the ocean, like you're saying, like like he's talking about like filling the abyss of the waters, and letting the probably the waves crash over you and stuff. However, in the end, he ultimately chooses not to. However, I don't think it's a good, happy decision he makes, because even in the song itself, he's not. He just says, "Why bother? Like, why bother doing this? Like right now, I haven't even reached my journey, my destination." But it doesn't feel like he's very optimistic. This felt like he kind of went on like a bit of like a sort of a existential crisis. The next song we are on is Monday, and this is like the easiest one I think I can talk about. Well, two are pretty easy to talk about. This, and yeah, we'll get to another one. But Monday, I interpret as after this sort of mental breakdown, the sailor starts going more easy on himself, and now he's actually kind of starting to enjoy this sailing. He is loving the views. However, at this point, I believe he is starting to become a bit infatuated with the horizon, and I like to imagine the song, in the chorus especially, is dedicated towards the horizon in some like weird way, where he's saying like, "Darling, don't you give up on a Monday." I also can interpret like a lot of the lyrics as like he's talking to himself, and like especially like, "Darling, don't you give up on a Monday." Like maybe he's talking to himself to try and build up the courage just so he can keep sailing. And yeah, I ultimately think Monday at the end of the day is Quedeca talking to himself, and kind of like reassuring him that he will reach the horizon at some point. The next song we have is Dancing Without Moving. I have had memories with this song that I choose not to go into because of personal reasons. However, this is still like one of my favorites from the album. The whole album is amazing, so like I don't need to say that. I envision Dancing Without Moving as like Quedeca. It's late at night, he's sailing, and because he can't see the horizon, he doesn't have a goal. This is like, however, before when it's daytime, because he can. I feel like when it was daytime and like God stained and stuff, because he can see the horizon, he felt a little inadequate because he couldn't reach it. However, in this one, because he can't see it, he just does not have anything to worry about, and he's kind of letting free. This is the most happy I think we see him in the whole album. Even if some of the lyrics are pretty depressing when he's talking about his ex and stuff, I always envision this song as Quedeca like just letting free, kind of wanting to like test fate a bit. Like he says that he wants to lower the sail and just let the wind blow him wherever, and just let that go. But I feel like in this song, Quedeca feels ultimately incredibly free, and that's about it. I see. Just imagine him just kind of feeling nature, even if he's far out at sea. He's feeling the world around him, and he's feeling pretty good. That's why though is a complete opposite, and this is where I'm going to continue on with my waging war analysis. I think that's why the first verse specifically is exactly saying why he is not. I think waging war at a time like this, that's why. Explain explicitly why he is out at sea. However, I feel like this is the most explicit one, as he is talking about him being younger, 16, and growing older, and he talks about just the pressures he has had because of probably his fame. We gotta remember, Quedeca, is a YouTuber before proper musician. I didn't want to get into that because we already know, so this is gonna be my only time I'm talking about it. And yeah, and that's why I always envisioned it as like the first verse is like Quedeca like fully realizing why he's out at here, and this is just his statement. this is why he's out. And that's it. That's for the first verse. However, the second verse is like while he's sailing. The first verse is like pre-sailing. Then the verse afterwards is like while he's sailing, where he's like, life don't get any better than this. Just really enjoying this feeling and just kind of getting used to it to almost the extent he might live out at sea because he just likes it so much. However, does he really enjoy sailing, or does he just more enjoy the feeling that he no longer has to adhere to any sort of responsibilities on land? He doesn't have to take care of the relationships, the sailor. He gets to be alone, he gets to do something he enjoys, but is he really liking it, or is it just running away from his fears and responsibilities and aging? Yes, I know, that was pretty depressing. However, the next song is I Dream About Sinking, and that's my self-explanatory one. Quedeca is asleep, and he dreams about sinking. However, it's incredibly peaceful. He thinks of it super peacefully, and he would be kind of... I feel like this is a point in the album. He accepts death. He accepts if he dies on this journey, he will be okay with it. So sorry about that, by the way. Track 10. I know, we're getting through this really quickly. Well, not quickly. We're now like nearly 30 minutes in. Track 10, Natural Causes. This is where I feel like there's a lot of issues. Like for the sailor. I'm so sorry, I have to keep looking. I can hardly read this. In this song, I think that, of course, there's the lyrics like somebody's after me, something I can't see. Almost like this existential god is like after him, especially considering it's like there's like boats going missing in the area, and you know that can freak you out, especially if you're not getting the radio call. However, I think deep down, Quedeca is kind of haunted by land, and he doesn't want to end up back on land. He wants to stay out here at sea. If Quedeca somehow sees this video, by the way, hi. I don't know why that took me like 30 minutes, but cool. I'm so sorry, I have to keep... However, at this point, he cannot bring himself to turn back around. He is trying to call to see what is happening, but at this point, I feel like he's so infatuated with the horizon. He has just become so infatuated with the horizon and trying to reach it. I think that started in That's Why, and in Natural Causes that's expanded upon. He wants to reach the horizon now so desperately. However, I feel like that it is not a good idea to reach the horizon. I don't know what I'm saying. I think at this point, the end of his journey starts looming over his head, over the sailor's head and his consciousness and his mind, and it almost sort of starts to warp, where he will do whatever at this point to keep this journey alive because he just so desperately wants to reach that horizon. And now we're going to be at a jump cut again. I will be 1 second. And we're back. We are in the last 4 songs. Yep, last 4 songs. So let's get started on this. This one I can get through pretty quickly. At track 11, we have Thunder. At this point, Quedeca's mind has just so far gone because of how infatuated with the horizon he has become. At this point, he is having delusions of grandeur. I think that's how you pronounce it. Basically thinking that he is a god and that he will keep sailing through the storm. However, at this point, I like to imagine that he is on land, especially since in the movie he is on land for it. It's like the boat washed ashore and it sank. And now he is so desperately carrying the sail around with him everywhere, trying his best to, hold on. And he just believes he is a god of the thunder, and that he can survive anything. The next song, though, this is where things start getting intense. Track 12, The Great Bacchanal, with the amazing Danny Brown. Shout out Danny Brown, he did an amazing job. I have so much thoughts on this song. This is one of... I'm so sorry, I can't even read what I read. Okay. I think at this point, he is fully gone mad. His only purpose in life now, reach the horizon. It's been like a year out at ocean. And now, because of how far he has had no in-person human interaction, I think he's gone so crazy that he starts imagining this Bacchanal, which is like a Filipino moon-eating dragon. He starts imagining it in this like catastrophic, world-ending event. But is it real? Is it actually real? Or is he just so far gone? He's just so far gone from land, people, that if he came back to land, even though he is on land, I mean, like, if he went back to people, he just would not be the same. And nobody would ever, like, reconnect with him. And so, in some fucked up way, I think the Bacchanal, even though it's, like, world-ending thing, in his head, it almost gives him some form of peace because he gets to be the hero of his story. However, in the next song, he is brought back to reality. Track 13, penultimate track, Foregone. I envision it. I keep saying I envision this song. I'm so sorry. I just realized how much I've said that. It's probably annoying to hear that. I'm so sorry. But I always like to have the image in my head of this song as like Quedeca is angry at the ocean. He's almost angry that the water has to exist, like the ocean has to exist, because he just wants to reach the horizon. He would do anything to reach the horizon at this point. And he is angry at the ocean and he lashes out against the sea. I think this is his call to the horizon, basically begging to reach it at this point. Begging to just touch it, just touch the horizon. And that's how I envision Foregone, and now we're at Casper. I envision this song as a world-ending event, but not like from the Bacchanal or anything. I think that in Foregone, Quedeca did not anticipate this, as he is trying to almost seem like a threat to the ocean, because throughout the whole thing, the ocean hasn't seemed much of a threat to Quedeca. But at this point now, the ocean now becomes this big threat. A lot of water, like flooding the world. However, his infatuation with the horizon is so huge. This is his only chance to swim and try and reach the horizon. I always like to imagine this as like the horizon is consuming the land. It's consuming everything. Excuse me. The horizon is basically consumed all of Quedeca's mind and is now saying, we're going to go back to the beginning in no questions asked, when he believed the horizon was saying, I will be there when no one is. This is the horizon being there in some way, causing like the end of the world. And Quedeca does not care. He has not seen a single person. He doesn't care who dies at this point. Maybe he does, but he thinks basically, but I'd like to believe that the sailor believes there was some rapture and all of humanity is just disappeared. That's just how far gone he is. And then, yeah, he swims, he dives through the water, going deep and deep, getting closer to the horizon. However, hold up, let me make sure. And at the end, I believe that he does end up just reaching the horizon, but unfortunately, he dies. He dies by drowning in the ocean, Whether that was whether he was already planning to do that, that is something you can ask yourself. However, I like to imagine that he is drowning and his body is now getting washed ashore. And the album ends with the same waves that the album starts. I do not think that this album is a loop, however. I like to imagine this as one story. This is the sailor's tragic life and death. His journey went wrong. He technically did reach his destination. He did reach the horizon, but he died doing so. But I don't think it's a loop. I don't think he washes back and then it's a loop over and over again, because I just have never been able to imagine it like that. That's just a personal thing. You can have your own thoughts. I'm actually really curious. How do you interpret Vanisher Horizon Scraper by Quedeca? Because I feel like there is so much different ways you can look at this. I envision this as like a very tragic tale of just a man so desperate for something. And in the end, he did technically find his purpose, but he dies doing so. It's a really fucked up story. However, that's what I believe. That's it at the end of the day. So, to summarize, I believe that Vanisher Horizon Scraper tells the story of a man who is dealing with a lot of existential thoughts, like aging, and of course his fame on the world, and he so desperately does not feel like that the land almost suits him anymore. He needs like a space away from everyone, so he decides to go sailing. However, as he's sailing, in the beginning his heart isn't fully in it, but then as time goes on he gets more in it. However, the bottle in Godstain kind of haunts him and kind of makes him realize how much older he is, or how much older the bottle is than him. That's the better expression. And the sailor starts kind of going crazy, mad, and then he starts believing there's some god that is after him, and then he believes he is God, and then now he believes there is like a moon-eating dragon that is going to kill him in the world. However, the world is already ending. To him, the world is already ending. He just uses the Bacchanala as almost a form of closure for himself. And now he is so angry because he has not reached the horizon, and he shows his anger in Foregone. But then in Casper, the horizon consumes everything on the world. It's looming over him, and this is his only chance. So he reaches the horizon and dies. He drowns, he dies, but he reached the horizon. He will never be able to tell the story again. He is dead. It's not a loop, in my opinion. And that is it. That is what I believe the story of Vanisher is all about. I hope this all made sense in some cohesive way, because I felt like this was a bit disjointed. This is the same with my post-rap video, so I'm thinking of maybe redoing that. But this was one of my favorites to do in a while, because I felt like there was so much to talk about in this album, from the sailing to all the metaphors. I love the album, and I genuinely want to take some time to thank Quedeca for making such a beautiful album. Well, I didn't mean to haunt you, I think it's better, personal preference. This album was amazing too, and it was absolutely spectacular in every way. So, yeah, that's what I have to say about Vanisher Horizon Scraper by Quedeca. As I'm looking at the time now, it's been like 40 minutes. Long video. So, watch this in the background or watch this in focus. I don't care. Do whatever you want to do. And I will see you with my next one. My next one is going to be significantly less. It's going to be significantly shorter. Don't worry. And it's going to be less confusing and existential. I'm so sorry if I got confused anyone at any point. I'm not the best, but I hope I gave my interpretation very well. See ya!